Hi everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we've got an interesting job to do. I don't know what we're going to find with this thing. I have no idea. This is belongs to one of my neighbors. It's a 1961 Nuffield Universal 3 from England. It's been in their family since 1962. They've had it since it was 1 year old. What happened? Basically they were out working it and there was a little problem. It lost all the coolant. And I don't know if they didn't notice, blah, 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 whatever. But it ended up getting really hot. And when they fixed it and put coolant in it, now it just overheats all the time. So, at best, it's just breached the head gasket. At worst, something is cracked, something is warped, and really, really bad, this engine has wet sleeves in it. And that's a whole nother can of worms. But anyway, all we can do is we're going to pull a cylinder head off this thing and see what we see and go from there. So here's how far we've gotten. I've got the coolant drained out of it. I've got I think everything that attaches to the cylinder head removed. All I've got left to do now is take off the valve gear. And then we should be able to release I think there's 10 head bolts, or studs really, and lift the head straight up off. I think that's how it should go. I was worried at first. It looked like the top end of the water pump may be attached to the head, but I don't think so. There's a couple of bolts down there that attach it to the block, and this housing I was able to stick a screwdriver through the goop, and I don't feel any bolts going through it into the head, so we should be okay to just lift her straight up. Alright, here we go. We're going to get this head off of here now and see what we see. So the head's off. Now, preliminary inspection. I was guessing it would have a copper head gasket, and it does. You can see here how this is all blackened in between here, and to a lesser extent here. This is where the cylinder head gasket was breached. And usually that is bad, because that means that the head is not clamping the gasket between the deck of the block and the face of the head, which is usually because the head went like that. So we're going to have a look at the head now and see what we see on it. So you can see the same thing here, the discoloration of where it was leaking combustion into the cooling system. So what we're going to have to do is get this all cleaned up. I'm going to get the manifold off of it. We'll get it all cleaned up, and then we'll have a look and see if we can determine if it's warped or not, or at worst cracked. So we've got our cylinder head cleaned up. I cleaned it first with some brake clean, the deck of it or the face of it. Then I went over it with my sanding block. And then I just got a file here, and what you want to do, this is unscientific. I should have a machinist straight edge, but I don't. That's negligence on my part, always screwing around with engines and I don't have a straight edge. I cheat. So what we're going to do is just get a file and go across. And if there's, oh sorry, I got upside down. If there's any high spots, you'll feel them. The file will catch them. And you can see here there's nothing. It's just touching everywhere. That's the first good sign. So next we get our backwoods straight edge, an aluminum yardstick, and you're going to want to check. This is the worst spot always between the cylinders, and this is a 1/1000th of an inch feeler gauge. And look, it catches it. It catches it. Check it across. It catches it. It catches it. You go from corner to corner. Catches it, catches it, catches it, catches it. This cylinder head is A-OK. So, shockingly, we just need a cylinder head gasket set, and I can put this back together for him. The deck is all cleaned up. I went ahead now and I've installed the head gasket and put all the studs back in. And these two little screws hold the head gasket in position, and they also double as dowels to position the cylinder head. When I put the gasket on, trying to lower a multi-layer copper gasket such as this over a bunch of studs can result in disaster if you're not careful. So I just put in a few studs, lowered the gasket down, then put the rest of the studs in once the gasket was in place. So now we can get the cherry picker and grab the cylinder head. I've gone ahead and put the intake manifold on the head because when you lower it down, one bolt is trapped in behind this and you can't install it once the head is on. But the exhaust manifold I will install once the head is down and torqued. So this is how we do it. We got the cherry picker here and we'll just lower the head down. It does get caught up on the studs and get cocked. So you lower it down a little bit, then you jiggle it, then you lower it, then you jiggle it, and eventually we'll get it down. Moving right along here, I don't really have a manual for this thing, but I was able to find out that the torque spec for the head nuts is 100 foot-pounds. So we just winged it, and we started from the center and worked our way out and torqued it to 100 foot-pounds. It all seemed to go well. And then on this side, I've got all our fuel lines put back on. The actual injector lines are left loose until I start winding it and getting some fuel up here and seeing what I see. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the valve gear back together and lash the valves. Lucky I found the valve lash procedure here on the internet. And you can see here, I only have to have the engine in 2 different positions to lash all 6 valves. So when I see valve number 5, which looking at it is the exhaust valve on number 3 cylinder fully open, that means the rocker down, I can adjust number 1 exhaust and number 4. They're numbering the valves from front to back. Number 4, which is I guess number 2 intake. And then rotate the engine until valve number 4, which is that one, is fully open, and I can adjust the other 4 valves. And that's handy. I don't have to turn this thing over too much because this has had an aftermarket or accessory power steering system put on it. And you can no longer stick a crank through the front of it and turn it over. There's nothing there to grab, just a bolt head. And I can't get a socket down in there. So that's good. So we have to get that 1 valve down and then we can adjust a couple of valves. Right, so we've got these 2 done. And I did find that they were quite tight. The valves on this, they want the intake and the exhaust to be 13 thousandths. And that's what they are now. But they were both very tight. I had to back them off both at least half a turn on the screw to get the clearance. So I don't know, somebody's been in here adjusting the valves before and got them just a wee bit tight. But anyway, that's okay. We're going to fix them up now. Now I have to turn the engine until this one is fully open and I can adjust all the other valves. Well, it's all back together. Now the last thing I got to do is to try and get this thing running. Diesel, once the fuel system has been opened, you have to prime and purge and all that stuff. So I've gone ahead, opened the fuel valve. That'll let fuel gravity flow to the lift pump here. And then we just work that lever on the bottom of it. And you should eventually start feeling it doing something. But I don't feel this thing doing anything. It's probably Caesar or something, the plunger inside. Because it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Anyway, so what we're going to do is just start turning it over with the starter a little bit and see what happens. You can see here, we've got fuel coming out the injector lines. That's a very good sign. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up and we'll keep turning it over and it should eventually purge its way up into the injectors and she should start. Super. I tightened the lines at the bottom. And now I was turning it over a little bit, only for a few seconds, and I see fuel coming out the tops of these. So now I'll tighten them up and she should start right up. Well, let's see what happens. There she goes. Give it some throttle. Okay, that's good. I can only run it for a few seconds because there's no coolant in it. And that funny surging thing, brum, 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 it was doing that when it came here. So I'm not sure what that's all about. It's probably just old age. I think it probably evens out when it gets a bit of a load on it. So we'll go put some coolant in it and see what we got to do from there. Now we'll crank it back up, and we're going to look for bubbles in the cooling system. Oh, the starter switch on this thing. There she goes. Nothing. That's very, very good. So I'll put the cap on it and we'll take it for a ride. Oh, here we are, taking the little Nuffy for a ride. It's in first gear now. I gotta try and get it in third. There we go. Oh, that's better. Now, the front end in this thing is pretty worn out. Steering it really gives you a workout. It's a good thing it's got power steering because you'd get tired real fast trying to keep this thing going straight. But anyway, it's running good. Nothing's leaking. It's not overheating anymore. No bubbles in the cooling system. So I'd say it's a victory. Take it back to the garage. I'll put the hood back on it. Call the neighbor up and he can come get it and put it back to work. Anyway, that's all I wrote for that job. When I was out driving it around, something didn't seem right. And when I come back, I started feeling around on the hoses and I realized the thermostat was not opening. And, well, that's not good. Lucky it's a big cooling system and it holds a lot of coolant and it didn't really hurt anything. So, I took it apart, found that, yes, indeed, the thermostat did not open. I tested it. And lucky for me, it's just the standard size that all those old American cars use. So I had all kinds of them kicking around here. I grabbed one, made sure it worked, and put it in. Refilled the coolant, took it out for a spin now, and everything's good. It's keeping its cool. There's no bubbles in the rad. Everything's hunky-dory. So I'm going to get this back over to my neighbor, and it'll be back out in the fields tomorrow doing what it's made to do. Anyway, hope you learned something there. I sure did. Been a long time since I had my hands in one of these old 3-cylinder diesel tractor engines. You should smell it in here. It's awful. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Claremont Classic Garage. So long.